The night was heavy with rain, each drop rattling against the roof of Daniel's rundown house like an echo of his own worries, and as he sat hunched over at the small wooden table with unpaid bills scattered before him, he thought once again about how far life had pushed him since becoming a single father, with his 7-year-old son, Jacob, already asleep on the couch under a frayed blanket. Daniel wondered how he would stretch the few dollars left in his wallet until payday, when suddenly a knock at the door jolted him from his thoughts, sharp and unexpected at such an hour, and when it came again, softer but insistent, he rose cautiously, pulling the door open to find 2 little girls standing on the porch, drenched to the bone, identical in appearance with long wet hair plastered to their faces, their dresses clinging to their trembling bodies, and wide eyes filled with both fear and hope. They couldn't have been more than 6 years old, and their lips quivered as one whispered, "Please, sir, can we stay for just tonight?" A plea so fragile that Daniel's heart tightened in his chest, for though he was a man with almost nothing, he recognized the desperation of children needing protection, and he could not turn them away. Ushering them inside quickly, he found 2 old blankets and wrapped them around the shivering twins, guiding them toward the warmth of the small heater that hummed weakly in the corner, while Jacob stirred from the couch, rubbing his eyes in confusion before breaking into a sleepy smile at the sight of them, asking no questions and instead offering the toy truck he always carried with him, a simple act of kindness that seemed to relax the girls for the first time since stepping through the door. As Daniel quietly asked where their parents were, they only exchanged glances, eyes dark with secrets too heavy for children, before lowering their heads in silence. And though a chill crept up his spine at the thought of why they might be wandering alone in the storm, he chose not to press further, instead giving them his own bed and lying down beside Jacob on the couch, where the 2 of them shared a blanket, listening to the storm rage outside. And as sleep tugged at him, Daniel realized he didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but in his heart he already sensed that the choice he made tonight, to open his door and give 2 lost girls shelter, was a choice that would change everything. When morning light finally pierced through the cracked blinds of Daniel's small house, it revealed a room transformed from the uncertainty of the night into something unexpectedly warm, for the 2 little girls, still wrapped in the blankets he had given them, were curled together on his bed like fragile birds in a nest, their breathing calm and steady, while Jacob, already awake and brimming with curiosity, tiptoed around them, eager to show them his small box of toys. Daniel, still groggy but determined to make them feel safe, shuffled into the kitchen where the pantry shelves offered little more than a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter, and a nearly empty carton of milk, yet he made breakfast with as much care as if he were preparing a feast, setting plates before the children and encouraging them to eat, watching with quiet satisfaction as the twins shyly took their first bites and then smiled, as though reassured that kindness still existed in the world. For Daniel, whose own life had been marked by struggle ever since his wife had left years ago, the sight of 3 children laughing softly over toast and milk was a reminder of the kind of home he wanted to create, even if he had little more than love to give. Later that morning, when he asked gently where they had come from, the girls glanced at each other before whispering in unison, "Daddy will come, he always finds us." Words that raised more questions than they answered, but Daniel decided not to press, sensing that their trust was fragile and must be earned with patience. Determined to give them one good day, he walked them to the small park near his house, holding Jacob's hand as the twins followed close behind, their nervousness melting into excitement when they saw the swings and slides glistening with raindrops from the storm. And despite the meager bills folded in his wallet, Daniel bought each of them a small ice cream cone, his heart swelling as he watched their eyes light up with simple joy. As the afternoon faded, neighbors passing by cast curious glances at the poor single father with 3 children trailing after him, but Daniel didn't care, for in their laughter and smiles he felt something he hadn't in a long time. His home was alive again, filled with laughter that echoed long after the sun went down, though in the back of his mind lingered the question of when and if their mysterious father would come for them. By the time evening shadows stretched across the small neighborhood, Daniel was beginning to feel the weight of uncertainty press down on him, because though the twins had played all day with Jacob and had begun to laugh as though they truly belonged, no one had come to ask for them, no worried parent had knocked on his door, and he found himself glancing toward the street every few minutes, torn between fear that something was terribly wrong and hope that perhaps, just for one more night, he could keep them safe. But just as he was setting down a modest dinner of rice and beans at the table, The low hum of an expensive engine broke the quiet outside, and when Daniel peered through the thin curtain, he froze at the sight of a sleek black car pulling up against the curb, its polished surface gleaming even in the fading light, an image so foreign compared to the old vehicles usually parked in his struggling neighborhood. Moments later, the car door flew open and a tall man in a tailored suit stepped out, his movements urgent, his face tight with both fear and determination, and before Daniel could even react, the twins caught sight of him through the window and cried out in unison, "Daddy!" Before scrambling toward the door with unrestrained joy, Daniel followed, his heart pounding, as the man knelt down on the cracked pavement outside, arms open wide as the girls threw themselves into his embrace, clinging to him with tears and laughter spilling together, while he held them tightly, whispering words Daniel couldn't hear but recognized as the desperate language of a parent who had feared the worst. When at last the man's eyes lifted to meet Daniel's, there was suspicion in his gaze, sharp and protective, as he asked, "Were they here all night?" A question laced with both relief and worry, and Daniel, standing awkwardly in the doorway of his worn-down home, nodded and explained haltingly how he had found them alone in the storm, how he had offered them shelter and food, and though embarrassment flushed through him as he glanced around at the peeling paint and shabby furniture behind him, the man's stern expression softened into gratitude, his voice breaking slightly as he said, "You have no idea what you've done for me," and with those words, the night air shifted, leaving Daniel with the uneasy sense that this chance encounter was only the beginning of something far greater than he could yet understand. The following morning, Daniel expected life to return to its usual rhythm of quiet struggle, but instead there was a knock at his door, not frantic like the night before, but firm and deliberate, and when he opened it, he found the same man standing there, dressed this time in a simpler jacket yet still carrying an air of authority, with the twins clinging to his hands and smiling brightly as if eager to show their father the place where they had felt safe, introducing himself properly as Michael Harrington. He explained in a calm but heartfelt tone that he was a businessman whose life was often consumed by responsibilities, and in the chaos of a family gathering, his daughters had slipped away from their caretaker, leaving him frantic and searching through the storm until he found them in Daniel's care, and though relief had carried him away that night, he had not been able to forget the man who had opened his door to strangers with nothing to gain. Stepping into the small, worn living room, Michael's gaze took in the patched couch, the faded curtains, and the bare pantry shelves Daniel hadn't had time to hide, and though Daniel flushed with embarrassment, trying to wave off the discomfort with, "I just did what any father would," Michael shook his head firmly, insisting that what Daniel had done was more than most would have risked. Then, with a sincerity that caught Daniel off guard, Michael offered not only his thanks but an opportunity, telling him that he owned several businesses and wanted to give him a stable job where his hard work and devotion as a father could be rewarded properly. And though Daniel hesitated, his pride whispering that he had always managed on his own, one look at Jacob's hopeful eyes reminded him that accepting help was not weakness but another form of love. Over the weeks that followed, Michael became more than a benefactor, visiting often with his daughters so the children could play, building a bond that crossed the gap between wealth and poverty, and slowly, Daniel realized that the storm which had brought two lost little girls to his doorstep had also brought something else. A chance at a better future, forged not from pity, but from respect and gratitude, and as he watched Jacob laughing in the yard with the twins, Daniel understood that sometimes opening your door in the darkest hour doesn't just change someone else's life, it transforms your own.